Never crocheted before and want to learn how to make a little duck? Well, follow along. I teach you step by step.
Okay, so today I am going to teach you how to crochet a little duck. This is going to be for absolute and total beginners, people who have never crocheted anything in their life. If you know how to crochet, this video is gonna really be annoying for you because it's gonna really walk it through. Maybe you've never crocheted before. If that's the case and you just would like to know how to crochet a little duck, I am using a free pattern from Stringy Ding Ding that I will link in the description. So you can go there, and then if you get caught somewhere, you can come here. But before we start, I'm gonna show you what you're gonna need. You are going to need first and foremost fluff, okay? You're also gonna need yarn in 2 colors, okay? One for the body and one for the beak. You are going to need darning needles. All darning needles are needles with a flat, not super pointy needle tip, as well as a big eye of the needle so you can fit thicker yarn in it, okay? You'll also need stitch markers. These are going to be really, really important it's honestly really important for all little amigurumi or small animals. You're gonna need a hook, and I'll talk about hook size in a second, and a pair of scissors. Okay, so let's get started. First things first, you need to know what hook to use for your yarn. Also, please ignore my nail polish stained hands and I've got bad wrists. So every yarn comes with this little piece. And so this is the yarn that I'm gonna use. It's called Big Twist Living. It's an anti-pilling yarn and it's acrylic. I actually really like it. It's not super plush, but it also doesn't fray as much as other yarns because when you're starting, that can be difficult. It's why while I love blanket yarn, it is a more difficult starting. But what's really important is back here, okay? Back here, it tells you first, I love this and I didn't notice this first, it gives you washing instructions for this yarn. It also tells you about how much you're going to need depending on your project. So if you're gonna make a blanket, they tell you about 6. If you're trying to make a little coat or cardigan, about 5, a scarf 3, a hat 1. So you wanna make sure that your yarn, when you look at yarn, is 4, right? So on all yarn packaging, you're gonna look for this little thing of yarn, this little thing of yarn, and look for the number 4, okay? You'll also see this is for knitting. I can't knit, so that's not helpful for me. But then it'll say crocheting. And it says, ideally, you want to use a 4.5 millimeter hook for this yarn. So that's something to keep in mind. However, I have learned tricks because people are amazing in post. And while ideally I should use a 4.5 millimeter hook, excuse me while I grab it, like this one, right? You can see that it says 4.5 millimeters. I'm actually gonna use a 3.5 millimeter hook. You could also use a 4 millimeter hook. The reality is when you're making little animals, you wanna make sure that your stitches are nice and tight so this fluff isn't gonna come through. There's 2 ways to do that. One is to do your stitches slightly differently that we're not gonna worry about. But the other is to use a hook size that is either a half size down from what's recommended on the packaging or a full size. And what I mean is either half a millimeter or a full millimeter. So this is the one that's recommended, but I'm actually gonna use a 3.5 instead of a 4.5. If you are just starting, there are different kinds of hooks. There is no wrong answer as long as you get the right hook size for what you're doing. And if you're starting, a 4 might be a better starting point. I will say, if you have issues catching yarn, this, it's called an incline hook, and I really like these Susan Bate ones. They're really good. They help you catch the yarn a little bit better because their hooks are a little bit like deeper than these over here. It's up to you though. There's not really a wrong answer. Okay, when you are crocheting, it is very, very important that you make sure your yarn tension is tight. What I mean by that is nice and tight. If it's loose, your stitches are gonna come out very funky, okay? So, that's one really big thing to keep in mind. The other thing I wanna mention is if you want to turn it into a keychain, because I know someone wanted to do that, you need something like this and pliers so you can connect it to your piece. Okay, so the best way that I have found, and the most common that I've seen to make sure that your yarn is nice and tight, is you're gonna actually wrap your yarn around your finger, around your pinky, one full loop, and then a little bit more so you have some yarn in the back, okay? Then you're gonna take it and pop it over this finger. This should be in your non-dominant hand, okay? I'm right-handed, so I'm doing this with my left hand. What's gonna happen is I'm gonna control the yarn and hold the piece that I'm working on with my left hand, my non-dominant hand, and I'm gonna use my right hand to control my hook, okay? So, it's also really important to realize when you need to move your hook versus when you need to move your yarn. I was helping someone the other day, and that was something that they struggled with, as well as making sure to keep your tension tight. And that is going to give you not a great piece if you do that, because it'll look a little off. Okay, so the first thing we have to do is start with the magic ring, okay? You gotta roll with me through the magic ring, rewatch as many times as necessary. There are a couple of ways to do a magic ring. I'm gonna show you how I prefer to do it. I actually learned it from the Wools, those crochet kits. But this is probably one of the hardest crochet stitches, so just patience, some deep breaths, and let's do it. So I have myself set up so my yarn is nice and tight or taut. I'm gonna take the yarn and I'm gonna wrap it around my pointer finger, okay? Where I have this, and I'm gonna actually make sure that when I do that, I got some excess over here, okay? Wrap it around. I have some nice excess from my yarn tail, and this is my working yarn because it's coming out of the yarn ball. Okay, wrap it around my finger. I'm gonna take my thumb and I'm gonna put it right on top of where they cross, okay? Then I'm gonna take my other hand and I'm going to yank the yarn off my finger, but keeping my little loop. With my right hand, I'm gonna grab my hook. I'm gonna go into the loop towards my hand, okay? Then I'm going to grab this yarn with my hook. Remember, that little divot is to help you catch and control the yarn. So I'm gonna grab it and pull it through the loop. Do not let go of your loop, okay? Do not let go of your loop, okay? So then I'm gonna take yarn and I'm gonna put it over my hook, which is called yarning over, and I'm going to pull my hook through the loop I'm gonna pull the yarn through the loop that is currently on my hook, using my hook. I'm gonna twist it sideways. It's very difficult to do it to try to keep your hook straight, right? You wanna turn it sideways and take your yarn and pull it through your loop. Once you do that, congratulations, you have a magic ring. Okay, now we're gonna crochet into the magic ring. There's different ways to do it with the magic ring. I like to actually lightly put my finger through to keep my ring nice and big. You don't have to. You can totally hold it with your middle finger and thumb like you generally will with your piece. I like to take my middle finger, and pull it through, so that way it's still being controlled by my non-dominant hand. Now we're going to do something called a single crochet, and we're gonna do 6 of them into this loop. So remember, nice and tight yarn. If it's not tight, I'm gonna come back here and pull to tighten, okay? And that way this finger can also help me out too. So hook into loop towards my hand, okay? Towards my hand holding the yarn. Hook through. Now I have on my hook, my initial loop, my ring, and that excess yarn tail, okay? Now I'm gonna yarn over, so I'm gonna take the yarn that is from here, and I'm gonna use my finger to help pop it over my hook, okay? You'll start doing funky things and start twisting funny if you try to move your hook, okay? So I'm gonna take my hand and finger to help pop it over my hook, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna catch the yarn that is on top of my hook and I'm gonna pull it through just the yarn tail and that big ring that I've got my finger through, okay? So I'm gonna turn sideways to catch the yarn and I'm gonna pull it through those two. Now you can see I have my initial loop and I have the yarn that I just pulled through on my loop, on my hook. Now I'm gonna yarn over again. Remember, when you yarn over, you're gonna use your hand that is controlling the yarn. You don't necessarily wanna use your hook. It's not that you can't, it's just I have seen people twist and mess up their piece by doing it. So yarn over, and you're gonna pull the yarn that you just yarned over and turn sideways through both, okay? Take my yarn, pull it through one, pull it through two, ta-da, single crochet. So let's do that again. We're gonna do it a little bit faster, okay? Through, yarn over using my yarn controlling hand, twist hook sideways, pull it through the loop. I'm gonna yarn over again and pull it through both loops. Okay, I'm gonna stop. We've done 2 single crochet stitches, so congratulations. I wanna show you something. Also, if you ever are gonna pause and come back to crocheting, what you need to do is take your hook and pull out. This leaves a nice big loop so that if something happens and this gets tugged on, your piece doesn't undo. Because if I pulled this string, my entire piece would undo, okay? So I wanna do 2 things right now. First, I wanna show you the V's. These V's are really important, okay? This is where you're gonna crochet into. So we're gonna keep going through our magic ring that we started with, but soon we're gonna start actually crocheting through these V's. So hopefully you can see this is one V, this is a second V, okay? Now, the other thing that's really important is we're gonna work in circles. You need to know where the circle begins and ends. So what you always are gonna do is you're gonna mark the first stitch. So this is where my yarn's coming out of, so this is my second stitch. This is my first stitch. So remember how I said you are going to want stitch markers. If my stitch marker will cooperate with me, there we go. You're gonna take your stitch marker, put it through that V, through both strands of that V, okay? And close it. So I know this is my first stitch, and every time we go around, we're gonna do that. It doesn't matter if I prompt you or not, always. It is better to mark your stitches and not need it than otherwise. Otherwise, you will never know where you start and begin. And when you start working on things that go up and down, you wanna mark your first stitch because that'll make sure that your piece is a consistent size. Okay, let's get back in yarning, crocheting position. So, piece, my right hand, wrap it around pinky, come back, come through here. Now I'm gonna hold it with this hand, so this hand is free. Hook, I'm gonna put it through my yarn. And then I need to make this tighter, so I'm actually just gonna pull here. Okay, pull on the working yarn, the yarn coming out of the ball. And I'm gonna set myself up. Lovely. I've done 2, I need to do 6. So I have my 1 loop, through, yarn over, come back through, yarn over, twist sideways, pull through both. Okay, we've done 3, we need to do 3 more. I'm gonna go a little quicker now. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I need 1 more. Beautiful. Okay, so now I have 6, and I'm gonna show you how we'll count. So I'm gonna pull out. There we go. 1, right? That's 1 V, 2, 3, 4, 5, I have 6 V's, and so I've done 6 stitches, which is exactly what I need. So now, what's really cool about a magic ring is that it's actually adjustable. So we have this nice big loop, but we don't want that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our yarn tail and we're gonna hold the piece. I like to hold ideally where I have my loop that I'm gonna crochet, like put my hook in to crochet with. So I'm gonna hold my piece and I'm going to pull my yarn tail. I'm gonna keep pulling, 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 because I don't want any gap, okay? Okay, I have done that, and now I have a nice little circle, or ring if you will, hence why it's called the magic ring. Beautiful. So now we have 6 stitches, and we're gonna do something called an increase stitch. Don't worry, what's nice about an increase stitch is we're gonna do a single crochet, but we're gonna do 2 in each of those V's, okay? So let's get myself set up. Yarn through, pull, wrap around, perfect. And I know where I'm gonna start because I've marked it with my lovely stitch marker. So I'm gonna go through this V, okay? I'm gonna take my stitch marker out now that I know where it is, okay? Now, I will also tell you, by the way, this is the hardest one. This round is gonna be the hardest because you pulled this yarn. All of these are gonna be a little tighter of V's to go into, but that's okay. That's part of the reason I also like putting the stitch marker. It helps with that a bit. So I'm gonna take my hook and I'm gonna put it through both sides of the V. So I'm gonna put it through both of those pieces. So I'm gonna wiggle as necessary. I'm gonna even use my hand to help me because honestly, this first stitch is always a doozy. Okay, so now yarn, that was my initial loop. You can see I have both sides of the V. Okay, so I'm gonna yarn over. I'm gonna pull through both stitches of the V, okay? Pull through, wiggle as necessary, come back out. Now I'm gonna single crochet like normal. Take my yarn hand, over hook, twist sideways, pull through both. Now I'm gonna stop, freeze. You're gonna mark your first stitch. Okay, great. Now I'm gonna do the exact same thing I did and I'm gonna go into the same stitch that I just crocheted into. So I can see that it's right there. I'm gonna go through, yarn over, come out, yarn over, come through. And I'm gonna do that all the way around. So I'm gonna put 2 stitches here, 2 stitches here, 2 stitches here, and all the way around. I am trying to make this in one foul swoop so you can kind of crochet with me. So I'm gonna keep going and I hope you crochet with me. And if not, honestly, fast forward. Beautiful. Okay, now what I want to do is I want to make sure I have the right amount of V's. So we initially had 6 around, We did 2 in each, so now we should have 12. Sorry, I'm gonna tighten this a little bit. Great. Okay, so I'm gonna count. I know where to start because I've marked it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Perfect. Okay, if you count and you don't have 12, you're gonna need to pull through and restart, but make sure you know where your beginning is, okay? Okay. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do an increase stitch like we just did, and then a single crochet, just how we've been doing. Don't worry. Okay, so I know where my next stitch is. Don't wanna lose my loop. Okay, so I know this is gonna be my next stitch that I'm gonna go into, so I'm gonna take my stitch marker out. I know where it is. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start with an increase stitch, which is what we just did. So I'm gonna go into this V, hook through the V, okay? Yarn over like we've been doing, twist hook sideways, pull through, yarn over, pull through both, pause and mark my first stitch. Now I'm gonna go back into this same stitch that I just worked into. So through the V, around, yarn over, twist sideways, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Now we've done our increase stitch. We're gonna now just do a normal single crochet, which is honestly exactly the same as the increase stitch, except for we're only gonna go one time into the V. So this is my next V. I'm gonna go in, yarn over, twist sideways, pull through, yarn over, pull through both. And now I'm gonna go into the next V, so I only am gonna do that once into that stitch, but I'm gonna go twice into this stitch. So, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both loops on the hook. Now I'm gonna go back in, yarn over, pull through, 2 on the hook, and through. Now I'm gonna go into the next one, but I'm only gonna go in once. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. Now I'm gonna go through twice, and then 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, okay? And at the end, I should have 18 V's. So, like I said, I'm gonna keep going, but I'm gonna crochet faster. So we know how to do a single crochet, and you're just gonna go twice into the same stitch, and then only once into the same stitch, twice into the same stitch, only once into the same stitch. And now I've lost myself. Single, double, single, double, single, double, single. Okay, because then double, single, double, single. Okay, if you ever lose when you're doing a pattern, and I lost my train of thought because I was trying to talk, just go back to the start and kind of go through it, and I'll show you what I mean by that. It is also what I just did, and I'll show you. So what I mean by that is I know for a fact that I, in theory, if I've done it properly, have done an increase, which means go through the same V twice, and then one single, which means I go through it once. So I can go through, I can say, okay, if that's the case, these 2 V's are my double, that's my single, these are my doubles. Okay, next one is a single crochet, okay? The next thing, before we go on to our next round, there's a right side and wrong side. Okay, so the right side should look like this, okay? Kind of wrapped around, you can almost see the wrong side, and the easiest way that I've noted it's the wrong side is I have these horizontal bars, okay? that is the wrong side. Your piece will eventually start to curl, and you'll see that here. And when that happens, as much as possible, you want it to curl right side out because that's the side that you would like out, okay? Okay, so the next 2 rounds are just single crochets. So go through each V only once. So let's do it. Sorry, that's just me tapping to myself. Great. I know where my next stitch is. I see it with my stitch marker. Take the stitch marker off. I'm gonna do my single crochet. And then mark it with my marker. I'll also say, if you are new and your stitches aren't all the same size, don't worry about it. You will get better with practice. A lot of it is about that yarn tension. Okay, so I'm gonna go through all of my V's one time with a single crochet. You can see it's starting to curl. Okay. There we go. So that is round 4. And all that means is we have our circle and we've gone around 4 times. I'm gonna make a point of pushing it out so that way my right side is out and the wrong side is inside. The wrong side will naturally be the one that curls to be on the outside. So we're gonna do the same thing one more time. So yarn out. And we're gonna go through each V only once because it's a single crochet. When we go through it twice, it's called an increase. Okay, here, mark my first stitch. It's called an increase because you'll have more V's, right? When I go through each V only once, I keep the same amount of V's. But when I go through some of them more than once, well, now I'm increasing the amount of V's. It also increases the size. So as you can see, we're playing with the yarn, if you will, to make it get bigger. So what I mean by that is we started with this really tiny ring, but look how wide it is now. So later we'll make our thing smaller or go in. And that's like something to keep in mind when you're making amigurumi, is that the size will kind of ebb and flow, right? And what I mean by that is you play with the size of your last round to get the shape you're looking for. And you'll see that here because what we're doing right now is we're increasing, but we're trying to make a duck, and this one looks more like a rubber duck. And so we want its head, but then we need it to come in and then go out to form the body. So we'll go out, come back in, go back out, and you'll see where you have increased stitches, it will become a little bit bigger, and you do that on purpose to play with the shape of your amigurumi. All right, lovely. So we're now going to go around again, but as we go around, we're gonna mark where we're gonna put the eyes. Now there's two ways to do eyes. One, you can use yarn. The other is you can actually buy eyes. If you're gonna make it for a baby or an animal, you should embroider the eyes. And that's what I'm gonna do. If you're just making it for not a baby or someone young, you can do the safety eyes. They're really cute. But if you do have someone who could potentially swallow a safety eye, it's best to embroider. But we want to make sure that we're using a different color. So I am going to pull out 2 blue stitch markers. But if you notice, green is where I'm marking the beginning and end of my rounds. And for the record, I'm just going to make my eyes and beak the same color. Maybe not my best aesthetic choice, but this is yarn that I have available. Okay. If you have rolled along with me this far, I really appreciate it. I know it's a long video, but I also find it very helpful when learning to crochet to have things over-explained, because if you don't need the information, you can totally sort it out, but if you do need it, it's there. So, got ourselves ready. We're gonna do 4 single crochet stitches. Remember, don't forget to mark the first one. So, through, single crochet, and mark. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then we're actually going to mark this with a stitch marker. Okay, so we're going to take the stitch marker under the V we just did, pop it in there. Then we are going to do 1 single crochet, and then we are going to do 1 more, excuse me. You will have mistakes, it's okay. And we're gonna mark that one. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oops. Okay, so we are going to go around. We're going to put 5 stitches in, mark 1, and then mark our next side too. Okay, I'll show you what I mean. So let's get ourselves ready. Pardon my random ah sounds. If I have any editing capabilities, you'll have no idea what I'm talking about. If I don't, I'm sorry. Okay, single crochet, and we're gonna mark our first stitch of the round with, okay. This yarn and hook is just being very feisty. That's okay. I'm gonna mark it with my first, I'm gonna mark my first stitch. I will also say, by the way, the thing with using a smaller hook is it's not gonna catch the yarn as easily. It's why they actually recommend to use a larger hook to make it easier to crochet. But when you're trying to make a little animal, you don't want the fluff to have a lot of room to come out. And when you crochet with bigger hooks, more is going to come out. But just keep that in mind if you're having issues catching your yarn. I am too, obviously, but that's just going to be a thing when you're using a smaller hook. There's another way also that you can make your stitches smaller by yarning under, but I find for beginners, this is the easiest way to go about it. Okay, so that's 1. 2. 3. 4. And 5. And we're going to mark the 5th one. Okay. Now, we're going to do 2 more single crochets into our next V's. And then we're gonna mark the one that we just finished. And then if I didn't mess this up, you should go around 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Perfect. So I'm gonna single crochet 11 more all the way around. I will also say some of you might notice that I don't necessarily yarn over as much as I naturally pull the yarn over as I go through. So I'm already yarned over and I can just pull through. My point is if you aren't, because as you can see, I automatically go the direction, so I'm automatically yarned over. My point is I'm totally yarning over. You should totally follow that, but because I'm crocheting quicker, I found some cheats for myself that I like to use. Okay. Great. Now we're going to go around twice and we're just going to go single crochet all the way around. After we do that for round 7 and 8, because we've crocheted 6 times, we're going to learn something called a decrease stitch, okay? It's not difficult, but it is another stitch. Excuse me while I cut this random ball of fluff off my yarn. Okay. Also, if you want, you can totally roll your yarn into a ball. I find it helpful. Yarn gets tangled on me. I actually was going to record this the day before when I ended up recording it, but I had to spend hours rolling this into a ball because it got tangled and I ran out of time. Okay, the other thing I want to tell you is if you have issues knowing which V is the next V, what I'll tend to do is look where my yarn is pulling. So I can see that it's kind of pulling from here, which means this is going to be my next V. That's why sometimes if you notice me looking sideways, it's actually me checking. Okay, I know where my next stitch is. So I'm gonna crochet my single crochet, pause, mark it. And now I'm gonna single crochet around. So when you get to your stitch markers, it's going to be annoying. It is going to be very, very annoying. And you're just going to do your best to go next to your stitch marker. And around your stitch marker. As you can see, I'm pushing it off to the side. There we go. I'm still marking it in the weirdest way. I'm going to see if I can do the other one better, which means marking it so the marker is actually coming out here. Yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. Both loops. Feisty. Sorry, I hate crocheting with stitch markers in, but that is okay. Great, now we're at the easy part. And the next round will be easier because we've already done one row above the stitch markers. Perfect. Now I'm going to go around one more time. I am going to, though, before I do that, fix the stitch marker I put in funny. So, or I crocheted around funny. I'm going to note where it is So for anyone else who made the same silly mistake I did, and I am going to mark it. I'm gonna go around in theory. There we go. Marked it. So I just took it out and I know where it was supposed to be. Pulled it around. For help, I used the other stitch marker, as well as I know there's one stitch in between. Really quick, before we do one more round of single crochet around, I'm going to show you how to count how many rows you have. I struggle with this, but you can see. This is round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And we're going to go around 8. We're going to do round 8 next. But that's how you can count it. Okay? Okay. Let's crochet around one more time. Single crochet all the way around, and that will be round 8. Take my stitch marker out for the first one. Okay, mark my first stitch. Boop. And keep going. Also remember, hold your piece with your thumb and middle finger. That is another common mistake I've seen people. They try to hold it with the yarn they're controlling their hook with, and it doesn't go great. Okay, so now we're gonna do something called a decrease stitch. A decrease stitch, so we have this, it's gonna make it go, we have a ball like this, it's gonna make it go in, okay? Very similar to a single crochet. It's not more difficult, it's just slightly different, okay? So roll with me. Okay. I'm gonna note where my stitch marker is. I'm gonna go like I'm gonna do a single crochet. So I'm gonna go through my first V, I'm gonna yarn over, and I'm gonna pull through, but I'm gonna stop. Instead of yarning over again, I'm actually gonna go into my next V. Okay, yarn over, pull through. I have 3 pieces of yarn on my hook. My initial loop from my first V, from my second V. I'm gonna yarn over and I'm gonna pull through all 3. And then I'm gonna mark it. That is my first stitch. And that's how you do a decrease stitch. So let's do it again. Through V, pull yarn over, pull through, go through the next V, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through all 3. And we're gonna do this all the way around. By the way, this is, if I'm not mistaken, all the stitches you need to complete this duck. Which means if you have gotten this far, congratulations, you're gonna be more than capable of making this duck. Great. So at this point in the pattern, which if you want to see the full pattern, like I said, please go to Stringy Ding Ding. By the way, that's such a fun name. Okay. I am very purposely not showing you the pattern because if you want it, you should really go to them. This is their pattern. It is not mine. Now, if you're going to do safety eyes, you're going to do that or embroider them. Okay? So, to embroider, you're going to take some yarn. Okay? I like to give myself a lot of wiggle room. Okay? You're going to cut it so it's not connected to the ball anymore. You're going to take a tapestry needle. Any tapestry needle will do. I personally like these. They're a little bent. Does not have to be bent, but I'm just telling you so you know that mine is bent. But don't freak out if yours isn't. It's perfectly fine. Okay. So, thread my needle. Okay. Now, I'm going to go through not where I'm going to crochet. So now I've marked it. I know exactly what I'm going to crochet around, okay? So I'm going to poke my needle through where I'm going to crochet around, and then I'm going to take out my stitch marker, okay? I know where I'm going now. I'm going to pull my yarn through. Don't pull it all the way through. You do need some at the end to tie a knot, and I definitely have way too much yarn, but that's okay. I'm going to go down, okay? And I'm actually going to come back up. So I'm going to go like this, okay? And pull through. And I'm going to do this until I'm satisfied with the size of the eyes. Generally 3 times, I think, 4. Ideally, you would like to be using the exact same brand and the exact same yarn. Okay? When you're playing with yarn colors, you want to make sure that it is the same weight, it is made of the same material, and I find it easiest to just use the exact same yarn. I'm actually not today, but that's something to keep in mind. Okay, now I'm going to go in through the top. I'm going to poke out through where the top of my stitch marker is, and I'm going to take this stitch marker out. Okay, pull it through. And I'm pulling it through so it's pulling through under, not over. Otherwise, I'm giving my duck a weird unibrow, which is a style choice. Now, once again, I'm going to poke through like this, okay? Up and down. I want to do what I did on the other side, which I believe was 3. So we're going to do that. In hindsight, I would also not recommend gray white eyes. This duck might be slightly creepy, but that's okay. He's going to still be my homemade, made with love duck. Okay. Beautiful. Now I'm going to go through the top, and I'm going to poke my needle where I started, okay? Now, I'm going to come back to this. I'm kind of doing this in a funky order. I prefer to embroider before I stuff my piece with fluff, okay? You can totally stuff your piece and then embroider. That's what most people do, but I'm weird. Okay, fluff. So, when dealing with fluff, small bits, small clumps, especially because it's not a big duck. So, just small clumps, poke it through, and you grab more as you go. Remember, this is also when you're going to shape the head. If you want your duck to have a little flatter of a head, like I'm maybe going to do, you want to make sure you don't overstuff. You can add stuff later. We're not closing our head off, okay? We're going to go straight into the body, actually. Okay. I think that's enough fluff for now. Maybe I'll add some more later. So now what I'm going to do with my embroidered eyes, I'm going to take my yarn And I'm going to finish it. I'm gonna tie it just in a knot, just how you would a shoelace, right? At the first step of a shoelace, do that twice. Okay. Now, we're gonna weave in our yarn tail. This being our yarn tail. I'm gonna cut it so it's about the same size. Boop. My darning needle, both pieces of yarn through the eye of the needle. Okay, and now we're just gonna weave it through and have this thread get caught on the fluff. So I'm gonna poke it through, come out anywhere, and I wanna make sure that I pull through so all of the yarn is inside. I'm gonna do the same thing. Pull it through. I'm just gonna do that a few times. Doesn't really matter where you go and end up, as long as you don't do what I just did, which is you need to make sure you go through the exact same hole, because if you go through one next to it, you will mess it up and have a little mark, and you're gonna have to just go back and fix it, like I'm doing right now. This was my biggest fear. I'm gonna be making this video and make a bajillion mistakes. But that's okay. There's gonna be like 2 of you who watch this. I got it caught on my fluff of all things, guys. Okay. Okay, we're just gonna cut my fluff now. It's coming out. Be really careful not to cut my yarn. This is a very poor choice of what I'm doing, by the way. I wouldn't recommend it. Ah, got it. Okay. Goodness gracious. My greatest fear was making lots of mistakes while I make this video, and I have done that. Okay. I hope at least one person it helps. Okay. Great. When I'm satisfied, I've pulled it through a bunch, I've embarrassed myself on YouTube. We cut the yarn, and then all you do, and I like to hold the fluff in because it's still in there, kind of wiggle it so you can't see the tail, okay? By the way, this piece that's from our magic ring, from the very, because see, this is the yarn coming out of the ball, whatever. This is my loop, I mean. This I'm just gonna shove in there as well. It can be stuffing. If I'm crocheting something really small that needs stuffing, I will use it, like my yarn bits, like these. Okay, let's clear up. You will need your needle again later, and well, hopefully I will not make the same mistake I made a minute ago. Okay, beautiful. Your head of your duck is complete. Okay, so now that we've added our eyes and we've stuffed it, what we're gonna do is we're gonna start off next round with an increase stitch. So remember, that's when we go through our V twice. We do 2 single crochets in our V. So single crochet. Okay, also don't be silly like me and actually properly get yourself set up. Okay, and single crochet. Now I know I've done 2 V's, and the first one is my first of my row, so I'm gonna mark it. Okay, now we're gonna go and do 5 normal single crochet stitches. So 1, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I have got 3 left, and in those we're going to do increase for all 3. So 1 single crochet into this V, 2 single crochet into this V, 1 single crochet into this V, 2 single crochet into this V, 1 single crochet into this V, 2 single crochet into this V. Perfect. Beautiful. So now we're gonna go increase, and then we're gonna go 7 and then increase the last 5. Okay. First, we're gonna mark it, and then we're gonna go in again. So we do our increase. Okay. Now we're gonna go through 7 and single crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Great. Now I'm going to do 5 increase stitches. Okay. That's 1 increase. 2, 3, 4, and then this is my last increase. And if you notice, our eyes are here and we're making a bigger like tail area. Okay, now we're gonna do a increase and 12 single crochets and then 6 increases. So let's do it. So we're gonna go increase, but we're gonna do only one of them. Mark it. And then we're gonna do another one. And now we're gonna do 12 single crochets. Okay, now we're going to increase. So, and we're going to do 6 increases. I almost messed that up. That was only 1. Now it's an increase. So that's 1 increase. 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, lovely. Let's keep going. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of shape it how I want it to kind of turn out a little bit. Not that you have to, I'm just a little weird about it. Okay, so now we're gonna do 9 single crochets. Then we're gonna do 3 increases and 4 single crochets. So let's do it. Okay, 1, and mark it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. Great. Now we're going to do 3 increase stitches and 4 single crocheted stitches. So 1, 2, 3 increase, and now we're going to do 4 single crochets. Great. And you can see it's starting to kind of come together like a duck. Okay. So now we're just going to go all the way around for 2 times and just single crochet. So know where my first one is, through, and mark it. And keep going. Okay, I've gone around once. I'm gonna go around one more time. I'm gonna know where my first stitch is, take the stitch marker out, do my first one and mark it. And I'm gonna go all the way around. And if you've noticed, I do control a little bit the yarn on my hook by putting the thumb of the hand that holds the hook kind of on top to make sure that it's going where I want it to, that it doesn't slip off, that there's room for other yarn, etc. It's really curling, guys. Okay, there we go. So, sorry, I'm trying to like make the neck look smaller, which is a me problem. I made my decrease stitches a little too big. That's okay. Okay, so now, by the way, we're about to do round 17 and there's only 19 total rounds. So we're almost done with our body. Okay. So what we're gonna do, single crochet 21, and then we're going to decrease stitch 3, single crochet 2. So let's do it. We know where our next stitch is, remove our stitch marker, go through, yarn over, pull through, mark our first stitch. And now we need to do 20 more. 1, because we need 21 single crochets. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. All right. And that's 21 because I didn't count my first stitch. So we're going to decrease. So we're going to go through, yarn over, pull through, go through the next V, yarn over, pull through all 3. And we're going to do that 3 times. So that's 1, 2, and 3. Beautiful. So now we're just gonna single crochet the last 2. Okay. Now we are going to repeat. We're going to decrease, do 2 single crochets, decrease again, do 2 single crochets. So let's start with our decrease. Decrease. One single crochet, 2 single crochet, and decrease. One single crochet, 2 single crochet, and decrease. One single crochet, 2 single crochet, decrease, decrease. Okay, 1 single crochet, 2 single crochet, and decrease. 1, 2, and decrease. 1, 2, decrease. 1 and 2. Okay, so actually, you will actually end on a decrease stitch. So you'll go all the way around, but you'll actually end on a decrease. You won't do your last 2 single crochet. I got so zoned out when I was crocheting that I messed that up when I was... Anyway, it's all good, fixed it. So now we're gonna go a decrease stitch, single crochet, 1, 2, 1, 2. So start with our decrease, mark it. Now we're just gonna single crochet and decrease. Was supposed to be a decrease. My bad. Okay, now what we're gonna do is we're gonna stuff our piece. So remember, make sure your loop is nice and big. Kind of shape your piece if there's any specific way you want it to be. And then, just like before, small fluff, push. Be careful, you need these outside, okay? You can even grab them and hold them while you stuff your piece. It's best to work in tiny batches because then you can kind of shape a bit how you want it to be. I'm weirdly obsessed with my neck of my duck, but I think it'll look okay when I add the beak, which will be the next thing we make. Which I think shouldn't be bad, but I think the sewing it on will be a little bit of an adventure. Okay, make sure you're pushing your fluff where you want it to be. Also, as you can see, my stitches are really nice and tight, so it doesn't really look like fluff is gonna come out of them, which is great. It's actually why I actually do prefer to go down a hook size. You can go down half a hook size instead of a full hook size, and then, as I mentioned earlier, there's a different kind of stitch, but I can do the other kind. It's slightly different from what we've been doing now, not much different, but I actually prefer the going down a size. I just find it, I don't know, I find it easier to do, and that it gives a really nice, tight stitch. Okay, I'm happy with how stuffed my guy is. So, I'm going to get ready to crochet again. I'm gonna do 6 decreased stitches and 1 single crochet. And then we're gonna fasten off, and I'll show you how to do that. So, pushing my fluff in as I go. I'm gonna do my decrease. Mark it. Okay. It is a little bit harder to do with fluff. Decrease. That's 2. Three. 4. 5. 6. And now single crochet. Okay, we're almost done with the body of our duck. So what you're gonna do now is you're gonna actually take a decent amount of yarn off and cut it. I'm done with my yarn ball now. Then I'm gonna take my yarn, I'm gonna pull it out, and then I'm actually going to take my loop, that yarn tail that I just cut, pull it through, and tighten. Now we're gonna close it. You're gonna need your hook again, or you're gonna need your needle and not your hook. Through the end of the eye of my tapestry needle. Okay, that did not like that. If you have issues too, a trick, you can always fold it and push that through the eye of your needle and then yank. It's easier. So now I'm gonna take my stitch marker out. I'm gonna go through the front loop of all my V's and pull up and through. So through the front of my V towards the middle of my piece and pull up. I'm going to do that again. And I'm going to keep going until I've gone around. I'm going to pull it nice and tight to close. Great. Got a little duck. Quack, quack. It's missing a beak, I know. Okay. Then I like to make sure it's knotted, so I'll make a little knot around. And I'll push this down. Then I actually hold the knot in place and pull my yarn. Not the biggest deal because you knotted it earlier. Now I'm gonna take my yarn, push it through the piece randomly again, trying not to make the same mistake I made last time. Almost did make that mistake. Perfect. And then cut off the end. And now we're gonna work on the beak. Okay. I'm gonna set my little body of the duck aside. I'm gonna find the end of this yarn, wrap it around, and we're gonna make magic ring. So I'm gonna go cross, hold, pull off my finger, yarn through, okay? Grab my yarn, pull it through, yarn over, pull through, and I've made another magic ring, okay? Just like before, we're gonna do 6 single crochets into the ring, through the ring, right? 6, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, mark our first stitch, which is obviously on the other side. Pull the yarn. So I got my loop is bigger. Now grab the tail and close my ring. Pull it as tight as you can. I've made a silly choice and used a different yarn. And so my duck is gonna look really funky, but that's okay. I'm okay with a funky duck. I'm doing exactly what I told you not to do. Okay. We're gonna now do increase stitches. Single crochet twice into each V. So. That's 1. Mark it. I gotta go back. All right, that's 1 increase. Two. 3, 4, almost. 5, and we're on my last increase. Okay. Now, I'm gonna make sure I tighten. Okay. I am going to cut my yarn tail, but I'm gonna leave a nice amount of excess. Kind of how I left too much before, I wanna do that this time. It's better to have too much than too little. Okay. And cut. Boop. Now, all I'm gonna do, my loop, keep pulling, pulling, pulling. All right. Take out my marker. Gonna flip this to the correct side. Okay. And actually, because I know how this is gonna be, I'm gonna tie my two together in a knot, my two yarn over here, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold it to make a beak, okay? So I'm actually, because I know that, I'm gonna tie this just in cross, how you do if you first tie your shoes, the first step. Just gonna do that twice. By doing that, I'm just helping me have a closed, proper beak. And now I'm gonna sew it on. Okay? So, long tail, through. I'm gonna decide where I want my beak of my funny looking duck, which is a yarn choice, by the way. It's not the pattern. I'm gonna poke my hole through and I'm gonna come up. So I'm poking it through the side, but I'm gonna come up. Because it's a beak, what we're actually gonna do is we're gonna kind of sew up and down. So I'm gonna go through the top of it and come down, okay? And pull through. Okay, don't let the other yarn get caught. There we go. Okay. And now I'm gonna come up and pull through. And that way I have a beak rather than a circle. Come down and through, and I'm just gonna keep sewing. I'm very bad at sewing. It always makes my little critters look a bit funky, but that's okay. As well as the yarn I used is different yarn, so it's automatically gonna look a little bit funnier than if I used the same yarn. Okay. When I am satisfied, which I think I am, maybe not. I'm gonna poke my yarn out. Okay. Remember, you're trying to stitch it so the beak stays relatively closed-ish. Like enough that it can be opened, but that it's not a flat circle, okay? So, I am gonna come tie another knot with this bad boy over here, this string at the other side. Make another knot with them. And then the last thing, we're gonna go and hide the yarn just how we've been doing. So I'm gonna actually tighten this because I'm gonna keep my excess string just in case. I'm gonna put my other side through here. And we're gonna go through. don't worry too much about how you sew the beak. Generally, things will be helpful and give you, well, that's fun. My yarn got caught. Give you instructions for how to sew it. And ideally, you should try to listen to them. I'm horrible at sewing and somehow never do. Not because I don't want to, but because I'm really bad at sewing. Okay. Again. And then I'm gonna take my smaller, like shorter bit of yarn, and I'm gonna cut it off. Here's the other thing too, is when you first start to do stuff, at least when I first start to do stuff, get overly paranoid at doing every tiny little thing right. And yeah, getting your stitches right is important. But honestly, if you mess up how you stitch it, don't worry about it. Like, there's so many small things that you can mess up when you crochet, and it's totally fine. I wouldn't mess up the stitches or the count, and if you want it to be picture perfect, you can't mess up anything. But if you're first starting to crochet, you can't be too hard on yourself, okay? It is, once you know how to crochet, very simple, but until you get there, not so simple. Okay. And that, now I just play with the yarn to hide it, is my little duck. Okay. If you do want to turn it into a keychain, all you do is you take pliers, you open that little spot, hook it around one of your rounds, close it, and hook the other side as well. I hope it went well. Please, if you make one, please send me a photo. I would love to see it. And share it with your friends. Share my channel with your friends, please. Like, subscribe, or follow, whatever one is available. Thank you so much. I hope this was a helpful tutorial.
And there you have it, a duck. Please let me know if you have questions or concerns in the comments, and please like and subscribe.